Welcome to the Soul Touched by Dogs podcast, the show for dog lovers who see dogs not as toys or tools, but wise souls worth our respect and care. I'm Anke Herman, and I'm your host. I talk to pawsome humans, people who do great work for dogs and their people. So come and join us for today's conversation. Hello and welcome, Wendy. I'm very happy to have you here today.
Oh, I'm delighted to be with you, Anke. Thanks so much for inviting me.
Well, thanks for coming. And the reason I invited you was because other people actually said what a brilliant guest you were. So when I saw that, I'm like, oh, I want her on my show. So here you are. Thank you. So let's start the way I always love to start, is let people know, where are you based and what's your business with dogs?
Sure. Well, I am in the U.S., in the state of Florida, in the lovely area of Sarasota, where we don't get above below the 40 degrees you were talking about. We never really do that. But my business with dogs is not so much business as personal experience that led on a journey of discovery and then research and then writing a book. And it all started with a little brown rescue puppy. Uh, Started out so promising, like so many of these adventures do. And then, we cured her of worms and all the anemia and all the problems that come from being born behind a gas station without a mom, being raised without a mom. She was in rescue. And next thing you know, I was in over my head. I was really struggling. And I'm afraid I got very impatient with this little puppy. Um, I felt like we were, adversaries somehow. I thought she was out to get me, honestly. Which, isn't really fair, but that was how it seemed to me, because we had been getting along so great, and then she started getting healthier and bigger and energetic, and next thing you know, I couldn't leash her. I couldn't do anything. It was just chaos, and I was really in a mess, in a pickle. And I went to my husband and I started to give him, all the reasons that we should bring her back to the shelter. Like, oh, she's still young, she's still cute, people are going to want her. Somebody more qualified can, get her. And because this is not working out so great for me. And I said that because I was the one doing the primary care for the puppy. I mean, he cuddled with her at night, but I was doing all the, the other raising the puppy challenges. But he could not be persuaded. He snuggled with that puppy every night, and they had created a bond, and he still believed in her, and I had to find a way to get over this problem that was really stressing me out. I was also worried. We had two cats, and I was certain that this dog was grow up and kill the cats. Like that,
Oh,
I just had visions of chaos for years, and I was a wreck. And so really, in desperation, I had this crazy thought, because I've never raised a child myself, but I had just helped write a book for parents who are struggling. I worked with some wonderful experts who started an Institute of Child Development at Texas Christian University, Karen Purvis and David Cross, wonderful professors. And I had this moment where I thought, this is a puppy, but I'm a struggling parent, really. I can kind of relate to these people who we wrote the book for, and that made me think, maybe I should just go back and flip through the manuscript and see, maybe it has some wisdom for me, because the puppy books, the guides, the manuals, they they were okay if the puppy was calm. They kind of taught you how to do the thing, but they didn't tell you like how to deal with this insane creature that's like shooting around the house like they came out of a cannon. It was just not like I couldn't get it. So I went back to the book, and I started to just see things through a different lens. I started to think about the puppy's development and what it missed by not growing up with its full litter and mother in critical periods, and that we took her home really too young. We didn't know this at the time, but there were all these factors that, when I started to really think about it and understand and look at it, I got a lot more compassion, and I changed my methods. I just slowed down and I realized we're going to have to go at her rate, not at the rate that I was hoping to go. Because I had only dealt with grown, calm, dogs before, and she wasn't that. So that started me on a journey. And at first I didn't want to tell anybody I was using a parenting book, like, because that was seemed too crazy. But then it just happened over my career that I helped another, group of experts write another parenting book, and we took home a different dog, different rescue. And the more I looked closely at that material and the more I looked at the research in the animal realm and in the human child development realm, I just saw so much connection. And so that led to the book, that I ended up writing called Tender Paws, um, how science-based parenting can help transform our relationship with dogs. Because that's what happened to me. And then I just had such fun. I started talking to experts like yourself, dog professionals, and getting their own personal stories that illustrated some of these principles. And some of it was really very touching and moving. And I'm very grateful to all the people who spoke with me for that.
I love that. I love that so much. I kept laughing because I'm like, yep, there's my crew. And yeah, no, there's like these two up the top, like kind of similar, especially the black one, like way too early, and in this way, like, no. And that was actually what even started the idea for Soul Touched by Dogs. It was all the stuff that I read, exactly how you said it. It was like, oh, all the instructions, work for normal dogs kind of thing, right? All these, yeah, you have to have a level of calm for loose leash walking to even be a thing, right? Well, it certainly wasn't in my household. It was just like, well, let's just see if we don't get kind of dragged. No, and none of the tips worked. That was for me, it kind of got me onto that. No, 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 there's got to be something else. Those instructions, those tips are not all there is to it. And I just totally resonate with this idea. Actually, I have a friend of mine is a therapist, and she's written she's written a series of books, and she treats with, especially with kids and adolescents, and even grown-ups who have like hypersensitivities, right? And they're often misunderstood and wrongly judged. And whereas like, oh, there is behavior rules are enforced that somehow make things worse, right? And when she talks about her method, we've often laughed because she has a dog. Like, we always are like, you can take hypersensitive, like kids with hypersensitivity, and replace that with dogs, and it will full on be relevant, right? It makes so much
Absolutely.
sense. So what's the most surprising thing that you all of a sudden saw differently when you looked at it through the lens of a parent? Like, what was like the dog doing where you thought, oh, now I understand what's actually going on?
Well, there were a number of things. The turning point happened when she was so mouthy and just pawing and jumping and mouthing, and um, I just stood back and I gave her an opportunity to do it differently at her own pace. And when I offered her that opportunity, she stepped forward and licked my hand. Now, that doesn't sound like much, but she had never done that before. And that was quite different than putting her teeth on me, which is what she had been doing all the time.
So what did you do differently then?
Well, I first off, I had to center myself. I had to, like, calm down because I was feeling stressed and, uncomfortable that she was hurting me. And so I really had to just like calm down and say, okay, I'm gonna like model some of this calmness that I want to see from her. I'm going to stand back. And what I also did was I crouched down low, um, and I just started speaking in a very calm, soothing tone. I used the word do-over. Could have really said anything, but I was, for me as well as for her, like, let's do a do-over. And I put my hand in a way, but I didn't come up on top of her and I didn't pounce on her. I was a little bit to the side so she didn't feel like I was attacking her or she could get comfortable and come at her own pace. And I stayed at a distance for a little while, and she just started to, come forward, and then she like sniffs my hand and then licks it that once. And that one lick, that was it. That was like, oh, she wants to connect. She just doesn't know how. And if I could appreciate that and give her the time, that was usually helpful, especially for a growing young, heading toward adolescence kind of dog. Um, there's fear, and you talked about sensory. I'm so glad you brought that up. That I got excited because in the Connected Child book, for example, we talked about kids being online at school, and somebody just bumps into them and they freak out and they like start punching, and people don't understand that that's like a sensitive, a sensory issue. It's not that they're angry and when you start to look at it differently, like through the body needs to learn about the environment, and it's not just a matter of getting balance. It's reading the world through physical, and that helps your brain get wired too. And until all those things integrate, um, a child is going to suffer, and the dog has to mature and get through that's why puppies do those incredible cute antics, right? Because they're experimenting, they're throwing themselves around. They don't have the fine motor skills yet. They don't have the whole brain body connection super strong. And so just starting to appreciate, for example, with Hazel, the little dog I was dealing with, leashing her was a real issue. And I realized that, if I took it from her perspective, how would that feel? First off, putting the thing around the neck. Second, that leash would hit her back at unpredictable times, right? Because it's rubbed, how it drapes on a dog, and a grown dog begins to get used to it. They sort of anticipate it. But a little puppy who's underage and starting to have all her neurons firing, that could be scary. That could actually feel uncomfortable. That could trigger some of those sensory reactions that your friend was talking about.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And I sometimes, do you think, because it just reminds me of the actually dog of a friend of mine who was kind of same age as this one, and she was also found as next to nothing, full of ticks and whatever, and I don't know, maybe 4 weeks, like way too young to be away from her mother and litter mates, right? And that dog always had trouble throughout her whole life, like relating to other dogs. I was looking after her for a couple of days once, and I'm walking around with her, and there was this other dog coming along, like, oh, bouncy and playful. And she was like scared. She's hiding behind me, you know? And I'm like, you can't read that dog. Like you can't tell because the other dog was bigger, but like so goofy, so playful, right? Like there was nothing aggressive or threatening in that other dog's body language. But I'm like, isn't that interesting? She didn't read that. And
Yes,
then there'd be other situations where there were like big threatening look, and then she walks up to them. Like it's like you don't know how to speak dog because nobody taught you. I
right,
think,
right.
it's quite hard when you get a puppy like that young to almost you start below zero because all the stuff that normally the mother and the litter mates would sort of teach them in that natural way, they don't have that.
Right. And I've heard similar stories. Some people write about a dog that's a singleton, it has no litter mates, can have some of those issues too. Whereas the mother may, instruct them a little, but they don't have that real heavy duty experience and learning that's so valuable. Like they don't learn how to be a dog.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
Absolutely.
that's so true. And actually, my last one, my big white one, she grew up in a Spanish farm, and there were horses, and there were another dog with other puppies, like her own siblings, and there were like cats and chickens and horses and and she is the savviest thing ever. And then my other dog taught her a lot. Like, so she is the, like, well, that was the easiest puppy to raise ever because she had all that. And it makes such a big difference, when they know how to read their environment. So how long do you think? So once you had that insight, it's like, oh, actually, I need to come at this differently. What was sort of what were the phases, or was it kind of smooth sailing from then onwards, or was it, like what were kind of the stages for her to kind of grow up?
Right. Well, I have to say that I was learning too, right? So that first aha moment was very helpful, and it got me started in the right direction. And I started to use the parenting idea sort of in the back of my head, but I still looked at dog, information. And I would not say it was super smooth sailing because she grew to be a lot bigger than I ever expected, or we hoped. Like we thought we thought we'd get maybe 20, 30 pounds, right? But we got 65 pounds. And and so there were elements of that did not go so smoothly. And I had to keep learning. And what I ended up, in hindsight, I could see more clearly some of the opportunities that I missed. And I try to share some of that in the book to help people maybe avoid some of the challenges that I faced because when a dog gets bigger and stronger, um, and how do you keep that relationship cooperative? And sometimes, uh, and sometimes even they want to cooperate, but nature kicks in, right? Uh, I can't always compete with the squirrel that just raced across in front of her and ran up the tree. And in her case, that was super exciting. Uh, and then I got carried away. So, uh, and nearly dislocated my shoulder because I was not using the right equipment for that situation. So there, I would hesitate to advise people to follow me exactly in my footsteps because it was a learning process.
So what are some, like tips you would give them to avoid pitfalls you've
Yes.
fallen in? Do you want to mention just one?
Yeah, well, actually, what I ended up doing is I ended up sort of looking at the whole universe of interventions that the parenting people used, and then I mapped them to dog kind of things. And it helped me come up with a big framework. And I use the word hearts, H-E.A.R.T.S, as a simple way for me to remember them. And it kind of represents all the different things that you want to think about. H is for heal the body for obvious reasons. You got to get rid of the worms or whatever the problems are. And, and they might be invisible to us too. It could be allergies and food issues. But anyway, that's the baseline. So you start with H, heal the body. E is for enrichment and optimizing the brain, because that sensory input and movement are so important for well-being. Then you have A for appropriate environments with felt safety, because that feeling of safety lets them rest and digest and gives well-being and restores the body and the brain and emotional baseline and everything. R is for respectful and secure relationships. And that's kind of basic. That's sort of the golden rule, right? You do unto others, you treat people nicely, you want them to treat you with respect, you treat them with respect, and you can work that out with your dog too, whatever that means in your household. T is teaching sensitively and positively, because we know positive reinforcement handled sensitively, not cookie cutter positive reinforcement, but handled sensitively, and tailored to your animal and their needs. And then the last thing is the S is support the individual, because they might be young, they might be old, they might be sick, they might have this, or they might have have a breed in them that just takes over sometimes, and it's a very natural need, and we have to honor those. It's like their superpower. So there's so much there. That's why I use the hearts, because it's just trying to find a way to put it all in, keep it front of mind. So when we look at a dog that we're struggling with, we can ask ourselves, where in this, framework is there opportunity to improve for them, for welfare for them, for us, to get the right mix.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And it does make, actually, I saw this meme recently on Instagram. We kind of see it quite a bit where they say, well, the things that the very same qualities that dogs have been bred for centuries are now, now we take them into city apartments, and now that same behavior is problem behavior. Like your border collie, like your herding dog nipping your ankles, like your terrier digging up the, so it's like all the stuff, and it's like, oh, isn't that so true? And I love that you're saying, like, we have to honor what's in their nature and make sure you give them appropriate outlets for it. Yeah, I love that.
Right.
Yeah.
So much problem falls away if we can anticipate that proactively. It's just easier for people, easier for the dogs. It's just a win-win all around.
And even the whole thing of looking at it through the lens of the parent, right? Because I sometimes get this, like, like, I don't know, my parents will come and like, my dad will go like, wait, yeah, like, well, you need to like sit and plus, like, oh, well, dogs shouldn't go there or whatever. And I'm like, why do you leave the rubbish bin open on the floor then? Right? Would you do that to a toddler? And that's always the thing, it's like, would you set up a toddler for failure like that? Like, no, you would, like, no, but I shouldn't have to put the rubbish bin. I want to put the rubbish bin where I want, and the dog just needs to adjust, kind of thing, and I'm thinking, well, if I was to, like, would I do that to a toddler? Like, would I say, well, there's a socket, electricity, right? Well, the kid just needs to learn. Like, no, like, you protect it, you make sure you set up your child for success. And I would think, if you do take that same attitude, like, set your dog up for success and don't put him in situations where they, likely to fail, I think you're already a huge step ahead.
That's a brilliant example. It's absolutely perfect, because once you start to see them as a toddler level of, it helps you make different choices and don't resent them for being who they are. And you can sort of appreciate it, and that's a great way to frame it.
Yeah, and it takes the guilt away as well. Like, when that whole parenting approach, that whole, like, oh, my dog should be behaving, and why, yeah, I just love this so much. So where can people, get the book, get in touch with you, tell them where to find you?
Yeah, you're welcome to find me at wendylsunshine.com. That's my website, and the book is available from Amazon and Barnes and Noble and Simon & Schuster is the distributor. It's easily available. That's Tender Paws, P-A-W-S. And I liked it because it has a double meaning too. It's like pause, like, let's take a break. Let's just slow down.
I love it. It sounds so gentle, like that. I just love the name. Yeah, it's beautiful, and it really, I think it reflects what you're all about and what you're communicating there. So yeah, thank you. Thanks so much for coming. This was absolutely delightful. And yes, get the book, because I know what it's like when everybody else's dog seems to have it together except yours. I know what that feels like. Isn't fun. And I think looking at it through that lens of taking that role of parent makes all the difference in the world. So yeah, definitely do yourself a favor, check out the book and get in touch with Wendy.
So much.
Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed the episode, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review so other dog lovers can find the show. If you haven't already, head over to soultouchedbydogs.com and sign up for weekly doggy cuteness, tips, recommendations, and personal stories to warm your dog-loving heart. And if you know a pawsome human you think I should interview, I'd love an introduction. Email me at Anke, that's ANKE, @soultouchedbydogs.com.